Hi guys, how are you? So, you've read the first part of the post, basically about what pieces are mandatory to build in a computer and what pieces are optional, and you can find out then which suits you the best, whether you just need it for office work, whether you want it for office work and gaming, so onwards, we'll say, or whether you need a lot of storage, depends on your needs really. But I'll show you first off what are mandatory pieces that you're going to need for building. I'd like to just start though by apologising first. I will have an updated video for this problem. I don't have thermal compound at the moment for the heatsink and CPU connection, more or less anyway, so I won't take off the CPU heatsink and fan basically, but as I said, I will do an updated video on that, showing you how to install a CPU and how to mount the heatsink to it, more or less, and the appropriate amount of thermal compound you should use. Also in that video I'll include to show you how to clean basically a CPU thermal compound off the top of a CPU. Okay, so basically, let's start with it. You know what that is. That's the motherboard. That's the first mandatory piece you need for connecting to your tower. Next piece up is your RAM. You need at least one stick of RAM to make your computer functionally working. Next option then is you either have a choice if you want it for your operating system, a solid state drive or a hard drive. Don't worry about those, they're actually just sound dampeners that I have on my disk drive. Basically just keeps the sound down. In some of the cases can be quite noisy. It's kind of hard, it's good to look up reviews on cases about it. But basically, yeah, so hands down I'm a big solid state fan. Can't wait for them to get more memory or more storage on them, but it's the single best piece of hardware you can use for your operating system. The speeds are just so different and the stability and performance is shockingly, drastically more improved than what a hard drive has to offer. While hard drives are brilliant for storage because you get a lot more memory for half the price of the same. You get a tenth of the memory on a solid state drive versus a hard drive. But as you read the previous post on hard drives versus solid state, so you know all that. Basically, the next piece then is a power supply. Basically, yeah, now this is not a modular one. Modular ones you can actually detach some of the parts, which quite make cable management a lot better, and also it's good for economical reasons for power and stuff like that. Like that's a 700 watt power supply. It's Corsair Gaming series. I need that because I use about 550 watts to 600 watts, and plus on you should always have at least an extra 100 watts because most power supplies perform really well when they're actually not at full maximum load, working load, we'll say. But these are your mandatory pieces. Next piece now I'm going to show you is going to be about the extra optionals you can have on the board, which are quite handy to know how to put in and have stuff. Cool. Now, so the next pieces you can know about are, for example, video card basically. So the video card is used for if you're gaming or if you are using for streaming or video editing software. Quite a useful piece of equipment. Quite pricey as well. To get a really good video card, a really good quality one for modern day gaming, you need to spend about €130 to get a reliable one to run your games at high graphics. That's minimum. You could be spending, people spend up in hundreds to thousands depending on the systems. Next piece up then is not mandatory, it's an optional, is the Wi-Fi card. It's a PCI Express adaptation. It's the X1 piece on the board you can see here, more or less. That's that little guy there, more or less. That's where he's going to slot in. Basically that will allow your computer to have Wi-Fi. And then the next piece then, it's optional but nearly mandatory for me because this is a DVD disk drive. The reason I nearly categorise this as mandatory is because installing an operating system is hard on a USB. It's just awkward, it doesn't always install properly, whereas with DVD drives it's much more reliable when your operating system is on a DVD disc for installation purposes. But yeah, you don't need it. You can use a USB to install your operating system on your storage device. So anyway, yeah, at least you know now what's the optional parts and the mandatory parts for a start. The next step now is to start putting it into it. Just another few pieces that I have that I'm going to be using are more storage. It's just stuff I've been collecting over time, and I actually have gotten more RAM to add to my system, so I will be putting that in now as well soon enough. So let's get started on the build. Alright, let's get going with the build. So basically, first things first, have your tower stripped and put on the side. The little spacers that usually come with your motherboard, you should definitely have gotten these with your motherboard. More or less just push them into your tower. If you're using a mid-sized tower, this is basically the 6 fittings in here now. You mightn't see the ones on the side, but I'm sure you can see these little guys here. More or less, anyway, the next step now, just for this tutorial, usually the motherboard can go in, but just my case is awkward, just be careful of that, is basically I'm going to have to put my drives in first, the DVD drive and my hard drive that has the spacer or the sound dampeners on it, because they won't fit in if the motherboard is in first. So I'm just going to throw those guys in first. But first things first, always ground yourself and make sure you have your anti-static wristband on before you start pulling and touching your components. So yeah, grounded myself now. First things first, the DVD drive will go on top. So make sure you have that the right way up. And slot him into the top slot. Or, well, at least in my case anyway. It's probably better off going in this way. I just have the front taken off there now for this. So yeah, he's going to go in like so. Next is to grab the 3.5 inch drive. Make sure you have your connection, your SATA power and data connectors out facing, and slot him into the next 5.25 inch slot below, and align your screw holes up so that they're ready to be screwed in, more or less. Alright, so that's just what I'm going to do next now, is catch those guys and screw them up on this side. Oh, yes, sorry, I have my screws here now for this guy. So yeah, as you can see, the drive is in here. Actually, really good practice. Never use magnetic tip screwdrivers when screwing in screws to hard drives. You should be okay because it's not next to the drive, the magnetic tip, but it's a good practice to do that, to use non-magnetic tip screwdrivers, because it offsets the actuator arm, if I'm not mistaken, or the spindle. I'm not quite sure, I can't remember that right now. Yeah. So that is one side screwed in. Next is to screw in the DVD drive. Pretty much that's how it goes on the other side as well, so I don't need to show you that, but I'll just flip it around to show you just right quick. Yeah, so stand up the tower. Next is to grab your screws. You can flip it on the back side again if you want to, it's easier. And then just screw in your screws. It's just been a little awkward. This is a bit off. Not every case will go the way you want it to go. Yeah, cool. So that's your drives screwed in. Now, next is we'll move on to now we'll move on to the next piece, putting in the motherboard. Now, so I'm going to grab the motherboard now. Kind of getting ready to slot in. Make sure you have your 6 spacers that came with the motherboard screwed into your tower. Grab the board, slot it in here to the right direction and up, so your back panels will fit out to the back panel connector. Align your screw holes up. Perfect. And grab your screws for your motherboard. Now this is where the magnetic tip might come in handy, because it's a little awkward sometimes. Tight spaces and the screws pop out. It's just easy to grab them. Sorry if you can't see too well. You should be able to over here, but yeah, so that's your motherboard put into place. As I said, I'll do the updated video on putting the CPU into the motherboard and applying the thermal compound and then the heat sink on top of that. I apologise for that, you know what, I suppose there's not much I can do for the time being. Yeah, so the next piece is to, I'm going to start installing my smaller 3.5 inch drives, then I will move to connecting the RAM slots into place. Followed by the PCI Express card. Oh yes, sorry, just something you might as well see while you're here. Usually with CPU heatsinks that have fans on top of them, like this low profile one, you can see these connectors here that are basically CPU channel CPU fan. You'll see it written on the motherboard here, basically, so you can use this to connect the little connector here. So that's where your power and your control, for if you have software for CPU power control. Usually there's some that comes with some of the boards, but that's good to know anyway at least. Yeah, cool. So the next step is connecting these guys up. Solid state. The next one. Now as well, you will need to make sure you get, if you're getting a solid state drive or a 2.5 inch drive, if you do manage to get a hold of these guys, make sure you get a 3.5 inch to 2.5 inch adapter. Some of them are actually double. This is double, but I just prefer to have them spaced off of each other. I could actually fit 2 into this one, more or less, but I just had 2 of them, so might as well make use of them. Now, next step is I have just setting this up now for putting in these guys so you can see it a bit better. Just move these guys out of the way. There are your front panel connectors. You grab your first drive you want to put in and put them into your first 3.5 slot, or whichever one you want, your decision. Now, and then you can grab your screws. You don't have to worry for the solid state drive. You can actually use the magnetic screwdriver tip. So yeah, mount that guy in there. Also, make sure that you have the drive screwed on, that it's facing, again like the previous drives put in, that the connectors are facing outwards. Now, it's facing outwards, into the second slot. Probably put it into the third slot just to give me a bit of space. So that has been screwed on this side, whereas it's pretty much the same on the other side. I'm just going to tuck these guys in here just for a moment. Just to make sure I haven't flipped around. A little awkward with my case. Oops. Now, next things next, so is connecting up the, putting into the drives into the 3.5 inch socket. So, first step first is to get your drive and make sure it's facing outwards. Slide them into the first 3.5 socket and allow your screw holes up there. Get your screwdriver. And start screwing it in. Here. Same goes for the other side. Just make sure that's in place there. It's nice and firm. Perfect. Next drive then, put in the solid state now. Again, make sure your connectors are facing outwards. Yeah. Okay, the other side up as well. So now, that's those guys. Next thing's next then, another drive. Gonna connect him up again, just a little bit further down. Unfortunately, I just don't have any more screws, but usually the case manufacturers usually give you some of these kind of like little adapters that you can use for connecting up your drives to the bay. So I'm just going to slot this guy down here into this slot. Connector is facing outwards, matching up the screw holes. I'm going to use the shorter ones, they match up a bit better. Now, here's a little trick. Gotta make sure that's in the socket, and they're tight. And the same process for the other side really. Ah, cool. So that's all the drives in place. So yeah, you've got your two top drives here, the DVD, the first storage drive, got another 3.5 inch storage drive down here. The operating system is on my solid state drive here, and I have another drive up here then for storage again, more or less. So next step now is to mount the power supply into it. So we're going to do that now next. So flip the case. Just make sure that your connectors, nothing are hanging out below. Then sit your case back on the back, grab your power supply, get that guy ready for mounting. Now guys, so next step, get your stuff moved out of the way there, so component connectors and so on, and you're going to put in the power supply now next. Cool. So where things are a little make sure as well that you have some power supplies required to be facing, depends on the way that your fan blows. Does it blow air out for, like say, does it blow air down to cool the components and they go out the back, or does it actually blow air upwards? Some fans are strange like that in some power supply units, and so it's just something to read in the manuals that come with these guys, so be careful about that. Now I know my guy, you actually put it in this way. Now it does look confusing because the GS 700 looks upside down, but that's because it actually blows the air, it doesn't matter what way you put it, it blows the air down and out, more or less, so it'll draw air down and out. Some people have these really good ventilation things at the bottom. In this case no, unfortunately doesn't have it, but nonetheless, you sit that PSU in there. You're going to match your screw hole fittings up. Alright, like so. Now you get your PSU screws, and you're going to start screwing it together. So, my PSU a bit bigger. Screwdriver. Let's match the first one up. So now, match the first guy into place, screw him in. Pretty straightforward anyway, nothing too special about this. No. So you just screw that in like so. That's perfect. So now, you have your hard drive screwed in, or not your hard drive, sorry, the power supply screwed in, and you're ready to go. So just keep your connectors and leads out for the time being, just because it'll cause a lot of mess if you have it all in there. The next thing we're going to do now is put in the graphics card and the RAM, and you're pretty much nearly done. So you're almost there, guys. So basically you have the 2 sticks of RAM. Let's start with those guys, more or less. So these are going in next. Now the next pieces to go in are the RAM. So basically get your RAM stick, that's my low profile one, no Vengeance RAM. Make sure you have, see the little notch here? More or less, just make sure that that is, you'll spot it here in your RAM channel slots. You mightn't be able to see that too well now, but basically just sit him in straight down. I'm just aligning it up first so I can see. And just go straight down, but make sure your clips are out here. The white clips here you can see. Just make sure that they're out and put your RAM in, and you'll hear that click. It'll go in against the side of the RAM. That's your RAM in place. Perfect. Do the same thing then for your, if you have any more sticks. More or less. Like so. Straight down. Make sure your clips are out in the first place, or you just won't go in. And then you'll hear that click. They're in place, but just double check him a little. You'll know he's in place then if he's not loose and falling out. Perfect. So the next thing then we're going to put in now is the video card, basically. So just move that a little bit for you. So you can see here I have the back panel connectors broken off for the 2 slots for your video card. So so basically your PCI Express is what type of video card it is, and this is your PCI Express here, more or less. You're going to connect the card into that socket. Make sure the socket clip is pushed down, and then just push him straight down. That's perfect, he's in place. Now the next bit to do is get your screws and screw him in so that he doesn't move. Now he's connected to the back panel connector. It's perfect. You can use 2 or you can use 1, that's fine. He sits into place either way if he's screwed in right. More or less. Next little piece I'm going to show you then is an optional piece. I don't normally use it. I used to one time, but since then I've been happy using the power line adapters. They're a really good bit of hardware for a tower. Basically this is the Wi-Fi card. So let's just take off your antenna, do the SMA connector, and sit him into the PCI Express little one piece down here at the bottom. Just sit him in there. PCI Express X1. Screw in there now. Like the next chips are handy. So you just socket him in there like so, straight down again. There's no clip to worry about this time, just making sure you get your card in the right place. More or less, put your screw into place to make sure he doesn't move, and screw him down. And then just when you're finished screwing this in, put your antenna back onto the back of your Wi-Fi card, or you won't have any Wi-Fi for your tower. These guys are much better than your USB Wi-Fi because they just perform a lot faster. Reliable connection speeds, and you can even get extensions for the SMA connectors to expand that. Now, perfect, so now we have those guys in place. The next thing left now, and the last part of the puzzle nearly, is to just connect your power supply parts up and the front panel connectors up to the motherboard. So you're going to do that now. Okay guys, so the next step is to connect up all your power supply, or your PSU connectors basically. So we're going to start with the first one is your CPU or your motherboard's power connector. This is going to power all your sockets on your motherboard across the board basically. So we get this guy, just I'm going to try and use the cable management I have at the back. Some cases actually have really good cable management. You can just stuff all the cables out of the way. Unfortunately mine is pretty brutal, so the best solution I have is I can fish that guy, the main motherboard power connector, and a couple of other connectors up through, such as the CPU power, but it's pretty bad. So now he's up there. And just make sure your clip is facing the right way. My clip is over here now, on the outside of the board. You can see it too well there. Just sit him in. Make sure you hear the click. Might have heard that too well there now, but yeah, it's after clicking into place. Now, cool. So that's the first piece in. Next step is to get your CPU power, which is the 8-pin guy. The other problem should have been 24. So basically connect this guy, again now, run him up through. I'm gonna pop him up through here. And he's going to sit right in here. Now, I just want to make sure that that is not touching my RAM or anything on the motherboard that can affect it. As I said, it's pretty bad cable management in my case. A lot of cases have much better ones where they come out and they come right up at the top. It's really handy. Just unfortunately for my case, it doesn't quite want to play that way. So, next step is to get the PCI Express power supply connector, and that is going to go here to the video card. Now what I do with the rest of the cables here is I'm just going to tuck them in at the bottom. They won't really be in the way then of the airflow or anything else, no moving parts. So that's cool. There's a little slide slot here, I can just slip that through, so it's a little bit better. Now, next things next is to connect up, now that you have your video card connected, and then I have main power connector going to the motherboard sorted, the CPU is sorted. The next thing I'm going to connect up is all my drives, more or less. So, first things first is I have all these guys for the 4 drives. So I'm going to connect up, I'll save another one for this guy actually. So I'm going to connect up the first power connector, the SATA power, to that drive, the second one here to this drive, the third one here to this drive, and the fourth one to the DVD drive. Perfect, so now they're in series, they're connected. More or less, that's the SATA power line, one of them. The second one comes in handy then. I'm just going to tuck the rest of this into the side slot again. Same goes for this guy, but I'm going to use the very end of the line to connect up the bottom 3.5 inch hard drive. Facing this way. And now, perfect. The power leads are all connected up to all my disk drives and hard drives and solid state drive. Now, next things next is the Molex connector. More or less, the Molex connectors are going to be used to power the front fans, the dual fans at the front. They're going to be connected by a back-to-back connector, and one of them will connect to this. And then the other end is going to connect to this guy, the power connector for the extraction fan, which I'll show you how to do now. Ah, cool. Just going to connect the furthest link. Make sure that's sitting the right way. There's actually a groove at the top and that's flat at the bottom, kind of like the letter D. Make sure that's in place. That's perfect. Now I'll have power to the back fan. So I'm just going to again tuck the excess lead in here out of the way. Now, I'm almost done. Just all that's really left now is just to connect up the last few the front panel connectors to the motherboard, so that you have your indicating lights for your telling you if your computer is on, your reset button, your power on button, and the front panel fans. More or less they're going to be in one go. Always play safe with your wires. Yeah. Cool. So I'm just going to stand him up for a second just to grab. Now, just going to tuck this guy in here. And I'm going to use the end one. I actually could do something a lot easier with this. I could pull out the one that I already have connected to the back extractor and connect that to the front panel connector. Yeah, perfect. And then I'll just use the second one down in the series to connect the back panel fan. Oh, doesn't want to go out. Perfect. Now he's in place. Now, so that's pretty much all these guys connected. Most of the parts of the computer have now been connected up and are ready to roll. The only things that are left now are the SATA data connectors for each drive. Make sure that this guy is out of the way. Oh. So the last things that are left, as I said, are the data SATA leads. I'll just plug them in, they're pretty straightforward, and they're your SATA slots. Making sure as well that some motherboards only have a couple of SATA 3 ports. I have 2, and there's 4 SATA 2 ports here. So 2 6 gigabit transfer ports and 2 3 gigabit transfer ports. You need to make sure that your operating system one is going to be connected to the 6 gigabit, and your main storage drive, if you have more drives or something that you're running, like say Steam off of, or any of your games where you're saving your games to, run them off that as well, so they get the fastest transfer read and write dates you can get. The next step, so yeah, we'll connect up these guys and I'll show you to connect which ones, the drives to connect to which. So this is your SATA cables, basically right angle straight. This is what we're going to use now to connect up all of the drives to the motherboard for data transfer. So first things first is we'll connect from top down. So I'm going to go to the DVD drive, the right angle connector, and I'm just going to move that out of the way, as that's the next stuff now I'm going to connect up. So let's connect, run this lead down here. tuck in here. So that's connected to the SATA port 6. So I'm actually connecting, the first stuff I'm connecting is going to be to the last ports. Doesn't actually matter what order port you connect it to be honest, they'll work either way, but as I said before, just make sure that you connect to the right drive. So that's going to be my main storage drive where my games are and a lot of my extra software. So I'm going to make sure he is connected to SATA port 2, which is a 6 gigabit port, so he'll get maximum transfer data I can get out of him. Next step is my solid state drive as well. He's actually the fourth one down, second in the 3.5. So here's the right angle side to that. You can tuck the SATA in there and down to the SATA 1 port with him. Now he's in place. Cool. So yeah. And that's a definite. If there's anything you're going to connect to the SATA 1 ports or the SATA 6 gigabit ports, make sure it's going to be your solid states if you actually have one, because they really will utilise the full use of that. Whereas depending on the hard drive you get, if they're not a very fast drive, it may not use the use. So next step now is to connect. That's the next drive. So yeah, I have these 4 guys. The last drive now to connect up is my next extra storage drive. Perfect. He's in there, tuck that lead out of the way. Makes life a lot easier having good cable management. So as I said before, make sure to watch out for that. Just connect him here to port 3. So now, as you can see, all the SATA drives are connected up together more or less, and everything is nearly connected. The last thing that's left to play is the front panel connectors, which can be the most confusing to look at in wire terms, but don't worry, it's pretty straightforward to be honest with you. So yeah, we're going to do that now. Yeah, so last piece, pretty much. Let's connect the front panel connectors up. So first one's up, the furthest over is on the left side here. You might be able to see it too well now, but it's basically the audio connectors for the front panel, microphone, the headphone, and the HD. So just down here on your board you'll see an SPDIF out. That's for if you have a digital supporting of it. It's basically a digital optical kind of type. And then below that there's a 9-pin adapter, or 9-pin header socket, sorry, that basically has for the HD audio. So that will connect in there like so. Now, so that's the first piece in. Next piece then is your USB header basically. So you have a bunch of them here on this board. Now I have a bunch of them in mine, so basically connected to this one here. Just making sure you have your pins the right way, because again it's a 9-pin again. Perfect, so that's that guy in there now, as you can see. And you have this guy connected in here. That's your HD cable. Now the last little piece of the power connectors are going in, so now those first 2 bits are in. The next little bits now are these guys. So you have the hard disk drive LED, that's the plus and the minus. So also on the back If your connectors don't have the signs on them, they'll actually have a little arrow indicating the positive side of the actual connector. So basically on the board here, my panel connector, the positive side of the hard drive connector is here. It's these two here. The positive will be the left and the negative will be the right. So I match them facing out like this. So the red wire will be on the left and the white wire will be on the right. Then the next guys over are the reset switch. Again, that should be positive to the left and negative to the right. And the reset switch is actually just over here, so we'll do the power switch first. Yeah, and there you see your little arrow. And again. Now, perfect. So that's that guy in place. Now the last two to go are the reset switch. Again, your arrow is on one side here. Make sure that is to the left, because that is your positive and your ground is going to be on your right. Always check your manual anyway of your motherboard just to be safe. But there we go, the last two. Now the separate, these are the power LED and the minus LED. So all you have to do then is, on my board here, there's a gap between these two, but on the left is the plus. And on the right is the ground. And now, perfect. They're all connected up. So now, if you got that far, basically that's the building of the PC, more or less. Now I know my cable management again is not great, but that is just something that's bad with this case. There's only so much I can fit, because normally in some cases they give you an inch or more or less, but usually that is usually a bit of a better one. Now, cool. So the last bit now is just putting the panels back on the tower. Now that we have everything connected up, it should be good to go. I'm just going to attach these guys in. The last thing that's left to do then, as I said, is just connect the panels. Just do now. Yeah, perfect. So, you get your panels and put them on the right way. Making sure your cables haven't been pushed too far out to give yourself space. And basically get your screws for your tower. Then just start screwing them in. Now, put on the other panel.